Volkswagen Jetta VI. The most important question asked by those who have read the internet applicants for used Volkswagen Jetta VI is, what does the Jetta have with engines, and is it true that pistons are consumable? Let's start with the weakest 1.6 engine CFNA in the Jetta VI line. Technically, this is the same CLRA Mexicans, with the exception of the material of the cylinder block, which means that both of them faced cold knocks. Many theories and conjectures have been put together on this topic, but one thing is clear from this: replacing pistons with modernized ones solves the problem of knocking once and for all, which means that we will consider their incorrect design to be the only reason for what is happening. Is knocking so terrible if it does not lead to anything else? This moment is especially interesting. Many motorists who did not consider this sound a defect sometimes drive 300 TkM without any problems. This is approximately the total resource of the CFNA engine. However, there are also a lot of those who have already encountered an oil burner and the subsequent capital at 100,000 kilometers. Here's how lucky. The main criterion for alarm is when the engine starts to knock and when it is warm. Therefore, when checking a used car before buying, it is advisable to listen to a warm engine. Almost everyone knocks on a cold one. Endoscopy of the cylinders for scoring will be more useful than ever. The rest of the weaknesses of CFNA CLRA compared to those listed are mere trifles. As on the younger Polo, the collector can crack for absolutely no reason, and replacing the pump every 70 to 80 TkM can be taken as a given, which, in fact, applies to all other Jetta engines. For a 1.6 chain, you don't have to worry about the next 200 TkM. Since 2015, the noisy, outdated CFNA under the hood of the Volkswagen Jetta VI has been replaced by a quiet 1.6 Vw belt. The pistons have subsided and, it seems, forever. It is only a pity that many people have an oil burner, which, as in the case of the knocks of its predecessor, also does not lead to anything dangerous in most cases. I'm afraid that rumors about the propensity of turbo engines to break piston partitions are not rumors at all, but quite a reality. And the most dangerous in this regard will be the overinflated 1.4 TSI Cava, a little more reliable 1.4 Caxa, and a relatively new 1.4 TSI CZDA engine of the EA211 series. Point one way or another, with varying degrees of probability, everyone risks getting into the capital. Once unsuccessfully refueled by new, or better forged pistons. Nothing depends on the mileage of the car, the quality of service, and refueling effects. The more skeptical you are about the scheduled oil and spark plug replacement dates, the smoother you press the gas pedal and the better you feel in gasoline, the less likely it is that a modern engine will not make you pay a gold coin for dynamics and fuel economy. Combines EA111 series 1.4 engines and some other systematic problems and weaknesses. For example, a high-pressure fuel pump may start knocking, but at the same time work properly. There is already someone who will have enough nerves until the moment you break loose and buy a new pump. The turbine here and there often does not live up to 150 TkM, but there are many lucky ones who did not change the cartridge after driving 200 TkM. Jamming of the actuator and damper drive occurs much earlier if the damper drive mechanism is not lubricated in time. The consequences and cost of their elimination from this can be completely different, from trifles to the cost of replacing the entire turbine housing. And, of course, the chain. For turbocharged 1.4 TSI engines of the EA111 series, the native timing drive usually does not drive more than 100 TkM. It starts knocking at startup. It is better to make a replacement with the stars, since they, being made in China, also wear out by this point and often become one of the causes of premature stretching. As you can see, the reliability of the Volkswagen Jetta VI directly depends on the selected engine. The characteristics of turbo engines are impressive, but the risks of spending a large amount on repairs are incomparable. It will not be easy to decide when choosing a gearbox for a used Vw Jetta VI. It is clear that everyone wants a hassle-free car with an automatic transmission, but here you have to prioritize. Either you take a reliable vegetable in the form of a 1.6 with a traditional Eisen 9G automatic transmission, or you risk it to the fullest by buying a turbine on a robot. I think there is no need to talk much about the DSG-7. By and large, the box has three main weaknesses: clutch, mechatronics, shift forks. Dual clutches, depending on the driving style and the frequency of adaptations, live from 50 to 130,000 kilometers. Mechatronics is more tenacious, but expensive and also requires calibration. Forks break much less often, but repairs also cost a pretty penny. If you like dynamic overclocking, are not going to update attachments, make any adaptations there, and generally think that DSG is the same automatic as everyone else, then robot will become a stable, expensive problem for you. Get a better reliable 6-speed automatic transmission. Accurate, technically savvy owners of the DSG-7 can serve 150 TkM without major investments. What can we say about the mechanical box? There are almost no problems with it, but it is worth keeping an eye on the drive seals, as they have a habit of snotty, especially in cold weather. It is better to treat a leak immediately, until the gearbox has lost lubrication. Some owners note that the native clutch of the Vw Jetta VI is rather weak. It is easy to set fire to it, and the friction clutch resource is often less than 150 TkM. The reliability of the chassis of the Volkswagen Jetta does not cause any special emotions. It is quite a standard representative of the Golf class. The weakest points in the chassis are the hub bearings. Up to the first 100,000 kilometers, retire one by one, as scheduled, and it is better to change them for better substitutes so as not to provoke such an unpleasant relapse. By 100,000 kilometers, stabilizer struts and silent blocks of the rear front levers are also suitable. Shock absorbers without knocks and leaks cope with the work for 150 TkM. With the rear suspension, not everything is clear. It's strange to see how second-hand Jetta 6 applicants race for multi-links. The fact is that Mexican-assembled cars with a 1.6 engine were equipped with elastic beams in the rear suspension, and our spoiled people believe that such a design is ugly and, moreover, screwing into 90-degree turns at 100 km/h is not so confident, like with a multi-link. They dismiss such options completely, without thinking about the future. Up to 200,000 kilometers, the owner will not feel any difference in service, but then, when the rear silent blocks become unusable, the owners of the multi-link Jetta look at the Beamers with envy. But there is nowhere to go, it needs to be repaired. Problems with the steering rack are rare. Besides, the unit is quite reparable, and in specialized services the problem is fixed relatively inexpensively. There are no issues with the brakes at all. Neither jamming of calipers, nor squeaks, nor premature wear of mechanisms in the Vw Jetta VI occurs. Change brake pads every 40 to 50 TkM and brake discs twice as often. There are also few comments on the bodywork, especially after what has already been said about the weaknesses of the engines. The paintwork, like any relatively modern car, is not the most durable, but it's not even the scratches that are inevitable in everyday use, but the chipping resistance that Volkswagen has been chasing for decades. One pleases the bare metal does not rust either on the arches, or on the bottom, or on the thresholds. The rest is also nothing serious. Sometimes the door locks break, and the wiring harness can fray on the way to the trunk. If for no reason the windshield wipers fail, then know that moisture is to blame. You disassemble the drive motor, clean, lubricate, restore contacts if necessary, assemble and drive on. Salon Jetta without major surprises. Of the most expensive and unpleasant breakdowns, there are cases of failure of the recirculation damper actuators or the direction of the airflow. No repair, only replacement. The weak point will be the heating of the front seats. The interior of the Vw Jetta VI retains its original appearance for a long time, if the seats are sometimes cleaned from stains and water stains. The leather steering wheel turned out to be especially resistant to wear. After 100 TkM it looks only slightly glossy. What cannot be said about the sidewalls of the fabric front seats? The lateral support of the driver's seat to 100 TkM may leave a hint of a hole in the very near future. All this will have to be taken into account when checking a used Jetta before buying, or rather when evaluating mileage by indirect signs. By the way, the mileage here is duplicated at least in the engine control unit, and on cars with DSG it is also in the brains of the box. Just a passing procedure when assessing the remnants of the chain tensioner and the thickness of the robot clutch discs. Checking the mileage in the Jetta VI is now possible not only with turbocharged engines, but also with atmospheric one. 6. Many multi-brand scanners are suitable as equipment, but it is better to use a dealer ODIS or close to it. It is also important to remember that confirmation of a run on a computer does not mean 100% certainty. There are craftsmen who twist in their brains. However, not all dashboards lend themselves to adjustment. Cars with daily and total mileage are unlikely to be easily and simply amenable to intervention, but few people still take up the tidy from Johnson Controls. The daily and total mileage on them is located one above the other. Volkswagen Jetta VI is worth buying, if only because it is difficult to find models close to it in terms of driving performance balance today: comfortable, quiet, manageable, and relatively inexpensive. However, when choosing a used car, you will have to thoroughly ask yourself the question of choosing an engine and gearbox, so that the weak points of this or that unit do not suddenly hit the family budget. Both Mexican and Russian Jettas behave the same in operation. Reliability will be good here and there, but alas, such a statement is far from suitable for all modifications. Who needs a minimum of problems? We take 1.6 on the automatic or mechanics. It remains to be reconciled only with trifles. Those who need performance and low consumption should remember that Vw Jetta with a turbine and DSG on the used car market very often appear because certain problems peck out. The robot began to kick, the chain rang at startup, vibration appeared at idle, and etc. That is why such variations are often exhibited cheaper than the average market value.